So Cadman, one of the things that kind of sets us apart is our past experience. And that experience has dealt with handling a lot of high profile cases among the individual lawyers in our firm. For instance, you were the prosecutor on the Vanessa Guillén case, the initial prosecutor. That must have been very difficult.
It was. Well, whenever you have a case like that, where there's so much media attention coming in, those unique circumstances also right at the beginning of COVID. So a lot of America was home watching things very intently on the news. It really complicates everything about the case.
Right.
It complicates the amount of tips you've got coming in. It complicates getting to the bottom of what happened, complicates the prosecution for a variety of reasons, all the way from the beginning to the end.
From what I heard, you were kind of locked in the CID headquarters for a while.
It's very true. Multiple hours a day. A lot of America's working from home. We were in there just churning all day long, trying to figure out what had happened to her, which unfortunately we finally did. Fortunate that we figured it out. Unfortunate that what had happened. Very tragic case.
Right. Well, I've had some experience also dealing with these high profile cases. I was on the defense team in the Bergdahl case. I was on the prosecution. I was the chief prosecutor in the Brigadier General Sinclair case. And I prosecuted Colonel Johnson, the brigade commander of the 173rd. And I prosecuted a command sergeant major at CTAF. In addition to defending a mercy killing case back when I was a young lawyer. The one thing that I've discovered from all those cases is there are some similarities of problems that emerge from that. The number one problem that I've noticed in these high-profile command-interested cases is unlawful command influence. It's where the command tries to control the narrative because there's a process out there being covered, and in doing so, actually interferes with the actual prosecution of the case.
Well, that's exactly right. It's the classic case of too many cooks in the kitchen. When people at the Pentagon with a lot of stars, a lot of rank, a lot of experience start getting very hard questions about these cases, they start putting out statements that maybe don't reflect the reality on the ground, where the investigation is happening, or maybe serve to, as you said, influence the immediate commanders who are actually responsible back at the installation for what is happening in the case.
Right. Or even influencing the potential panel members. Right?
That's right.
Because in the Bergdahl case, we had statements from the President of the United States, from John McCain, and from other senior leaders, political leaders, who were making statements about the guilt of Sergeant Bergdahl before the case was even tried. And those type of unlawful command influence issues raise their head, even if it's a high-profile case within the installation, right? Because then you've got localized commanders who are doing the same thing. And that's why you would need a defense team that really understands unlawful command influence, both the right and the left limits of that. A corollary to that is that there's usually intense media pressure on these type of cases, these high-profile cases. The Vanessa Guillén case is certainly one of the most high-profile cases I think I remember in recent days.
That's right. It ended up influencing an entire act of Congress and caused the upheaval of much of military justice precedent going back 40, 50 years. It changed quite a bit as a result, at least partially, of just that one case.
It also resulted in the revamping of the entire CID itself.
That's right.
They civilianized, they got rid of their 2-star that was in command and put a civilian in command. All the result of a single high-profile case. The other thing that I've noticed is sometimes there's either classified or sensitive information that needs to be protected in those cases, especially with a lot of media scrutiny, right? For instance, when I was defending the mercy killing case back in 2004, there was UAV footage of the actual killing itself. Well, while the footage itself was not necessarily classified, all of the data that surrounded the footage was highly classified. So how do you show that image? How do you show this video, but yet protect very classified information?
It's exactly right. And even in things that take place in garrison, like the Vanessa Guillén crime, there's a whole other category of sensitive information. Most people in the military are at least somewhat familiar with classified information and the way it works, but there's also law enforcement sensitive information about tactics that law enforcement can use, means and methods, maybe equipment that they have to gather certain types of evidence, or the way that they go out and get this evidence. That stuff can be incredibly compartmentalized, and while it may not be classified, they don't want it in the public eye.
Right. Like in the Colonel Johnson case, there were rules of engagement that were sensitive and classified. In the Bergdahl case, obviously interrogation and the tactics that were used necessarily to try to locate him, some of that stuff was classified. So you got to be really sensitive to those issues when defending these really high-profile cases. One of the things that I also have noticed, even when I was in the JAG Corps on active duty doing some of these cases, my hands were tied. There were certain things that I really wanted to do that I could not do. Army policy prohibited me from necessarily engaging the media like I would have, right? If I was a civilian and didn't have those same constraints, obviously I have ethical constraints that are placed upon me through, the ethics that govern lawyer behavior. Those are different than the restraints put on you by the military.
It's exactly right. I mean, I can personally speak to this. In addition to the Vanessa Guillén case, I tried a case at Fort Hood that was a locally infamous case. It didn't really gather any national attention, but it hit the local news when the case was complete, and I got a directive from my leadership in the JAG Corps. You will not speak to the media. You will not make a statement. That is the job of the PAO and the PAO alone. And we were all very much on a lockdown order when it came to the Vanessa Guillén case, so that the military could control that narrative of what's going out, which sometimes included not being able to correct things that were entering the public narrative that I knew were just wrong.
Right. And those are the constraints that the military puts on you that civilian lawyers just don't have. I guess the final thing that really surprised me, and it really didn't affect me because I've always been an outsider, even though I was on active duty. But there is this kind of dual loyalty, right? If you're wearing the uniform, how hard do you punch the government in the face when you're defending one of these high-profile cases? I mean, because as a defense lawyer, you're only going to be a defense lawyer for 2 years. Maybe you'll get a second assignment. You have to go back into the regular JAG Corps after that.
Right. And the people that you're punching in the face are future raiders, senior raiders, future supervisors. The people who are directing them and what they do are future raiders, supervisors, maybe senior leaders within the JAG Corps. It is very hard to completely take the self-restraint, if you will, the self-censorship off if you're thinking about the livelihood of your family, if this is going to be your career. If you've got a multi-decade future in the JAG Corps, you've got to consider these things of who you're punching in the face and how hard you're doing it when you know that you got to go back to the mothership at some point.
Right. I know several defense lawyers who threw the gloves off and went all out. And those defense lawyers finished their time in the United States Army Reserve, not on active duty. So I can speak from experience. Some of the colleagues that I know that went all out, that it's really hard to fold back into the regular JAG Corps after you give it all in one of these high-profile cases. Well, look, if you've got a case, whether it's high-profile or not, we've got the experience to defend you. We are the Law Office of Will M. Helixon, your warrior advocates. You defend the nation. We defend you.